Secret Life of Plants, an exploratory journey of permaculture listening based on the book The Secret Life of Plants by Peter Tompkins and Christopher Bird. Or this talk could be called The Power of Merging Science and Philosophy. Introduction and Thesis. I am Tyagaraja, or Tiaga Welch, of Sustainable Humane Earth and Texas Turmeric. We are educators and medicinal plant farmers that utilize permaculture principles of design and indigenous practices of Sanskrit-based lineages for yogic health and wellness as our source of inspiration. We have been featured on Central Texas Gardener on PBS and have multiple small-scale urban permaculture gardens with aquaponic systems in Round Rock, Texas, in Austin at a health and wellness vegan macrobiotic restaurant and community center and gathering place called Casa de Luz. We're also in Georgetown, Texas, and newly expanding into a small town between Austin and Houston in Fayetteville, Texas. In addition to being permaculture farmers and educators through Sustainable Humane Earth, we also produce theatrical productions based on my music, of which we recently received the Nexus Artist Grant by the City of Austin to produce a community-enriching performance of our show, Bridging with Mother. Some of the footage of this art piece is used in this talk today on the secret life of plants. Similar to many yogic texts, this talk begins with why this topic is being discussed, and why it is you and me that are going on this journey together as two old friends talking together. This talk is also a response to the data-controlled information age of artificial data users of the AI world. While its application has benefit, there are many unknowns and already many current major moral dilemmas surrounding this subject, and it's my inner understanding of intuition that it could potentially lead to our de-evolving of our intuition and our intuitive powers. Intuition comes from sharing energy with human beings and with this divine Mother Earth. And in fact, communion with her, Mother Earth, further develops intuitive power and extends life. Surrendering ourselves to this process that is about to unfold will inspire intuitive creativity. Included in that response, the research for this entire presentation came from 3 books, information gathered at the local library, and pure inspirational thought that was not taught or learned, yet has been developed through intuitive meditative power. Let us not give away our power, yet harness it for the good of all creation. And let us start with the plant, for she is in desperate need of our mindful participation. As is stated in the book, The Secret Life of Plants, the reason why this talk is so important is that the vast majority still do not fully see the value of natural, organic, and indigenous practices, and as an agriculture industry still have not implemented the dire calls highlighted in this important book over 30 years ago. I must also touch upon the turning of an era. The scientists mentioned in this discourse were all thinking similar thoughts in different parts of the world at similar times, aside from Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, whose ideas came slightly earlier. All of them profess the need to shift consciousness, to release expectations, and live in the creative subconscious. Now, in our modern dilemma, we too are arriving at a turning of age. What will be left of our turning? Who will we be? The flow of this talk will play out like a stream of continuous dialogue. The dialogue is overlaid with video and inspirational images to reinforce the message in the words. First, we explore 3 scientists. Second, we will hear of stories that give example and proof to the thesis mentioned in the research. Lastly, the main takeaway from this talk is how permaculture and yogic wisdom teachings actually instruct one to listen deeply, become aware and receptive to subtle energy, and then how to apply this to daily life transformations. There are many talks on aquaponics, farming, finances, how to educate, and more. Due to the unconventional nature of this talk, it's worth mentioning, as is common with embarking on a permaculture journey, this talk is aimed at transforming consciousness, and in doing so, raises the vibration of daily patterns and helps remove the traps of our historical human tinkering and earthly dilemma. The common thread of genius that is displayed in what is to unfold is, due to a close relationship with plants and a keen inward pulling energy of insight, a permanent consciousness shift sparked within an instant and changed the observer forever from that moment. This power can be cultivated and reproduced, and truly is the merging of science and spirituality through integration with the natural world, in the end making us all that much better farmers. After all, aside from biology, aside from agriculture, business, and financing, besides diverting our life's passion into farming, what are we really talking about? What we're really talking about here is growing plants. Plants are cool. It is the plant making us do all of this. And in order to grow her, we have to become nurturers. This is sometimes something that cannot be taught, and it can be cultivated through daily habitual engrossment in divine thought. Divine friends, this is my interpretation of the secret life of plants, met with yogic wisdom teachings. Part 1, Plant Energy. Sri Jagadish Chandra Bose from The Secret Life of Plants, chapter called The Plant Life Magnified 100 Million Times. The Bose Institute of Research in the state of Bengal in India, just north of Calcutta University, still exists now as a pole star of science dedicated to the life, work, and research of Sri Jagadish Chandra Bose. Throughout most of his frustrating and revolutionary life, Bose was thwarted and denounced by the colonial evil that had its grip on India in the pre-Indian independence era of British rule, and conversely rejoiced by his country and celebrated by those British scientists that bear no allegiance to hatred and bigotry. His father sent his son to a simple village Patyashala rather than a colonial primary school because of what he called the colonial school's, quote, slavish force of adherence to British rule. Bose's early communion with village life were later crucial to his own appreciation of the world. Much later, he told an academic gathering, quote, "It was from those who till the ground and make the land blossom with green verdure, from the sons of fisher folk who told stories of the strange creatures that frequent the depths of the mighty rivers and stagnant pools, that I first derived a lesson of that which constituted true manhood. From them, too, I drew my love of nature." Bose later found himself a highly educated and highly esteemed scientist that could fill a lecture hall with eager and willing minds, yet his professional research, papers, articles, and books and essays were rarely given credit, thwarted from being published in science magazines, and sometimes outright rejected by British colonialists. Aside from his many publications that single-handedly advanced the scientific fields of physics, physiology, and botany, Bose was an inventor and made most famous for his invention of the crescograph, the first microscope that allowed scientists to see 100 million times smaller than the human eye, transforming the way research was done forever. Because of this research, Bose became the first scientist to refer to a plant's nervous system. This discovery led to experimentation and proof of emotional and human-like responses through energy waves, and experimented with electricity in regards to the plant's nervous system. Upon studying his own irrefutable evidence through experimentation and offering lectures and publicly performing these experiments in the company of other scientists, Sri Jagadish Chandra Bose made these statements. It was then that I understood for the first time a little of that message proclaimed by my ancestors on the banks of the Ganga 30 centuries ago. They who see but one in all changing manifoldness of the universe, unto them belongs eternal truth, unto none else. And a final address saying, is there any possible relation between our own life and that of the plant world? The question is not one of speculation, but of actual demonstration by some method that is unimpeachable. This means that we should abandon our preconceptions, most of which are afterward found to be absolutely groundless and contrary to facts. The final appeal must be made to the plant itself, and no evidence should be accepted unless it bears the plant's own signature. Part 2. Germany's Greatest Poet, Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. The archetypal plant, from the chapter in The Secret Life of Plants, The Metamorphosis of Plants. Johann Wolfgang von Goethe is Germany's greatest poet and is well known for being the author of Faust, as well as a lesser-known publication called The Metamorphosis of Plants. Goethe was not a scientist. He was not recognized by botanists and physicists. He was a writer. Inspired by and touched by the singular principle driving the entire existence of plants and earth as a whole. He describes some of his revelations coming to him in a flash while standing in a friend's or his own nursery, as if the plants themselves were indeed granting the revelations. Goethe began to publish his writings, receiving blankets of criticism from the scientific community. In response, says Goethe, and this is quite possibly my favorite response and quote from the entire book, I replace the word poetry with spirituality and have made the same statement. People forgot that science had developed from poetry, and they failed to take into consideration that a swing of the pendulum might beneficently reunite the two at a higher level and to mutual advantage. Goethe was then referring of his coming to the vision of the archetypal plant, or the archetypal organism, organismus, which possesses within itself the capacity to take on manifold forms, and which at a particular time takes on that form which is best suited to the conditions of the external environing world. Seeing that every part of the plant is a metamorphosis of the archetypal leaf organ, Goethe came to the conception of the archetypal plant, a supersensible force capable of developing into myriad different forms. This, says Sir George Trevelyan about Goethe's findings, there is no single plant, but a force that holds the potentiality of every plant from within it. And to us, or a Yoga Sutra Sanskritist, this is the definition of prana, or prana shakti, the inherent vibrational energy in all of creation. Goethe asserted this: all plants are thus seen as specific manifestations of the archetypal plants, which controls the entire plant kingdom and gives value to nature's artistry in creating forms. It is in ceaseless play with the world of the plant form, capable of moving backwards and forwards and up and down and in and out through the scale of forms. Summing up his discoveries in as simple language as he could muster, if all plants were not modeled after one pattern, how could I recognize that they are plants? In his old age, Goethe conceived the earth herself to be one living organism, saying, quote, if she inhales, she draws the hydrosphere to her, so that, coming near her surface, it is condensed to clouds and rain. This state I call water affirmative. Should it continue for an indefinite period, the earth would be drowned. This the earth does not allow, but exhales again, and sends the watery vapors upwards, where they are dissipated through the whole space of higher atmosphere. These become so rarefied that not only does the sun penetrate them with its brilliance, but the external darkness of infinite space is seen through them as fresh blue. This state of the atmosphere I call water negative, for just as, under the contrary influence, not only does water profusely come from above, but also the moisture of the earth cannot be dried and dissipated. So, on the contrary, in this state, not only does no moisture come from above, but the damp of the earth itself flies upwards, so that, if this should continue for an indefinite period, the earth, even if the sun did not shine, would be in danger of drying up. These statements highlight what is known in yogic science as prana shakti, and the art of pranayama, or the process by which, using the breath, energy is focused and guided, enhancing the aura or the pranic body, or what we call the pranamaya kosha, the energy sheath surrounding the body, much like the slimy substance that surrounds a fish, making it telepathic and energy sensitive. Prana Shakti is the energy pervasive in all of creation and is the reason for momentum of the creation to create. This can be cultivated similarly to Goter's explanation of Mother Earth breathing. Part 3. Gustav Theodor Fechner, Anima Mundi, the Cosmic Soul of Plants. Gustav Theodor Fechner came to his profound understanding of plants in a totally unexpected way. In 1839, he began to stare at the sun in hope of discovering the nature of the after images. A few days later, of course, he was horrified to learn that he was going blind. Exhausted and afflicted, he made the decision to retire to a darkened room to live in solitude, praying for recovery. Another pranayama in our tradition that is actually called a kriya pranayama is known as tratika, open eye gazing at a soft ghee or beeswax flame. In this process, energy is cultivated and stored in the eyes and subtly stimulating the brain, memory power, and an array of other benefits. Had Fechner known a yogi, even one living in his day, possibly he could have saved his eyesight and even made it better. Some 3 years later, while feeling he may have been healed, he began to venture outdoors again. Once again, as with Goter and other seers, a flash of recognition touched him deeply. He explains, joyously walking along the banks of the Muld River, he instantly recognized that flowers and trees were what he called besouled. Fechner says, as I stood by the water and watched a flower, it was as though I saw its soul lift itself from the bloom and drifting through the mist became clearer until the spiritual form hung clearly above the flower. Perhaps it wanted to stand on the roof of its budding house in order to better enjoy the sun. While still in seclusion, Fechner began setting down a series of remarkable impressions, and the result was a publication called Nana, or The Soul of Plants, published in Leipzig in 1848. Through this publication, Nana, Fechner created a new branch of learning called psychophysics. To Fechner, all things express in different ways the same anima mundi, or cosmic soul, which came into existence with the universe. It is conscious and will die if and when the universe dies. To him, this philosophy was the axiom that all life is one and simply takes up different shapes in order to divert itself. The highest good and supreme end of all action is the maximum pleasure not of the individual, but of all, said Fechner. And on this he based all his rules for morals. Fechner maintained, even through harsh criticism and dejection, that in its soul alone was the true freedom of any creature, saying, quote, from inside comes the voice, from inside comes the scent. Just as one can tell human beings in the darkened room from the tone of their voice, so in the dark every flower can be recognized by its scent. Each carries the soul of its progenitor. A plant story similar to stories elucidated in the book The Secret Life of Plants. Early on in my professional permaculture career, I consulted, designed, and built a rose and flower garden on permaculture swales for an Austin Indian temple. On a beautifully enchanted sunny day, I dug into the hard, mistreated soil of the temple grounds with the smell of incense and ceremony all around me. I was digging out the swales or trenches about 6 inches or to the depth of my shovel in 10-foot rows on contour. More than 6 inches beneath the soil, I saw a tiny speck of what looks to be a plant leaf. Only black clay and soil all around it. Just a small sprig of leaflets were poking their muddy faces out of the soil as if relieved to see the sun. I thought to myself, no way, this cannot be, because I recognized the leaf. I bent down and rubbed it with my finger, and upon the smell, lo and behold, to find it was, in fact, karipata, or curry leaf. It is possible that the roots of this plant were discarded and thrown down the hill on the current plot that I was digging, but it is another thing altogether that this plant was buried in darkness 6 inches underneath topsoil, which, as mentioned, was hard and lifeless. How was this plant surviving? Was it aware? Did it foresee the potential death or potential future all at once? My intuition told me something deeper, that as a Divine Mother devotee, and as this Divine Mother devotee is working in the soil and increasing the benefit and succession of nature, this plant lay in waiting specifically for me. It found me. I did not find it. This was in 2012, and the karipata plant that I have today that aids in sales at the market and provides a medicinal herb that we use in cooking in our daily life is that same karipata plant I saved from its demise under the subsoil of the hardened Texas black clay. Closing statements. It is my goal to continue this dialogue at the in-person conference as a part 2 of this discourse. Upon listening, some may be interested to know how it is that one puts themselves in a state of superconsciousness to even become sensitive enough to listen to plants. This question is better answered and practiced in person, and I will do my best to share it with you now if the participants wish to know. Some do it naturally, and some need practice and cultivation, and even those that are naturally sensitive, if put into practice, these yogic techniques can subtly advance those natural tendencies even deeper. In conclusion, there are many scientists written about in this book, The Secret Life of Plants. The selection of the 3 examples I chose were all scientists or thinkers that went beyond the science into the caves of their own hearts, utilized their intuitive power, and through doing so changed the world of botany and drew all that read these words closer to our inseparable relationship with plants, water, and the soil. For we are that. We came from water and earth. This is the setting up of the part 2 of my discourse. What is water? Thank you all for your patient listening and interest in high vibrational topics. Let us now discuss, question, and debate what we just heard. Thank you so much.